Know this. Introducing the original Blood Clot podcast, not players. Soothing semantic. Special dedication. All the way from New York. Boom. Yeah, man. SWOT semantic. Yeah, me know. Boom. Soothing semantic. Yeah, me know. Big ups to the man. Soothing semantic.
On another episode of Soothing Semantics, I am your host, South Afircan, and today we have a special guest. All my guests are special, that's it. I say this every time. Farrell, thank you for coming, brother. Appreciate it. So, Farrell is a South African, one of the few accents that can never get down.
Technically African American.
That's true.
I need my American passport to travel back to South Africa, so.
Really?
Yeah, because I did all my own paperwork. Self-proclaimed lawyer. I'm not a lawyer.
Okay.
And when I finished, I didn't realize that I needed to, if I wanted to have dual citizenship, I had to do some little things that if I was a lawyer I would have actually known. And so I didn't. And so as soon as I became a citizen here, I became not a South African anymore. And I lost my South African citizenship. So
you can't keep the.
You can, but it's part of your. I could get it back, but it's part of your swearing in that you renounce any other sovereignty to any other country or any other allegiance to any other country. And there's some sort of form that you fill out saying "blinader," which means that's a Hebrew word. It means
kind of without a promise.
Yeah, it's a kind of.
What was it like growing up there, and how did you find your passion for filmmaking?
It's funny because the passion for filmmaking actually started way back then. I was, when I was in high school, I was never turned on by anything. I was like a typical screw-up student, and then all of a sudden I found theatre and that whole vibe, and I just came to life. In the last couple of years of high school, we were in yeshiva and we took the yeshiva to like the finals in these like plays that we were competing with other schools, with non-Jewish schools, and all of a sudden our school was in the finals after years of like just being never making it up there. Mm-hmm. So I really showed like that I could do this stuff, and my parents I thought would tell me. I mean, I decided then I wanted to do film. And my parents, I figured they're gonna tell me, sorry kiddo, it's not a film, not a job for a religious Jewish boy. And actually they were cool. They said, no, just go speak to someone in the industry. So I went to speak to this guy, and it
Interesting. So you were surprised that they were so supportive.
I was blown away that they were. But then I went to the guy in the industry. I found like a couple of people just to talk to see if it was really something viable. And it was, South Africa's history is pretty funny because, well, not funny, but just at the time, and the relevance is that the years of apartheid had an impact on South Africa commercially and otherwise. And the guy I went to see said, "Listen, dude, if you plan on being in America, then you could pursue film and that. But in South Africa, there is no industry." And he talked me out of it. And I was a good kid, so I actually didn't pursue it. And so I didn't get into film then. I went to yeshiva. Met my wife in Jerusalem, got into computers after that, studied computers.
Were you staying in
No, but then I met my wife in the street in Jerusalem, and we were married in Jerusalem, and then she took me kicking and screaming to the USA. And we've been here ever since that.
How did you meet in the street, I'm curious? Was this some crazy story?
It's kind of an interesting story. I mean, I had a good buddy who was not afraid of anything, and he saw this cute girl sitting on Ben Huda Street drinking coffee, and he said, "I'm going to go and meet that girl." And I said to him, "Zev, we don't meet girls in the street. I mean, we're in yeshiva. She's from Scandinavia. Look at her. She's a blonde, whatever, and she's probably not Jewish."
Right.
So he basically said, "Screw you," and I said, "Fine, screw you." not in a bad way, in a friendly way, and. He took his guitar, and I had my guitar. We we pretended to play and stuff. He actually plays much better than me. And he went over to them and he was, the girl, and he's talking to her, and then another girl arrived, and I started talking to some soldiers who were, they had long hair, and at another table at this coffee shop. And then after finished my conversation with the soldiers, and I went over to the table, right, and we started talking, her and I. And then one thing led to another. We ended up leaving, bumping into the same girls like 2 days later at a club or pub or something. It was like it was a break. They call it Bain Hazmanim. It's between the times. It means.
Isn't that right off of Ben Yehuda?
No, the club. It's not. I'm not saying the name of the club. I'm saying that it was Bain Hazmanim in Yeshiva.
Oh, okay.
It was like the break in Yeshiva. So we weren't learning in Yeshiva all day. We were hanging out in the street.
I went to school in Israel.
Right. So it was actually Mike's Place, I think was the name of the club.
Sure, Mike's Place, okay.
And
that place.
And then, whatever, anyway, the bottom line is 6 months later I'm married to that girl. Like, it's pretty interesting, pretty wild story. My friend was the introducer, and he was the one who tried to pick up the girl, which is kind of hysterical.
Funny how that works.
It's weird how that works.
It's quite a wingman, unintentionally, but that's funny.
I feel
it's
bad.
I love when stories like this happen. I love when it's not. I'm not a big matchmaker person. Well, for me, not at all. But like, when it happens organically, when it happens naturally, it's so much nicer. Like when it just kind of happens.
It was miracles. A whole thing. I went home and cried. That was after the second time that I met her, and then I gave her my number, and I took her number or a friend's number because she didn't even have a number then. We didn't have cell phones those days. I'm an old fart, I'm a young filmmaker, but I'm an old fart because the filmmaking actually came back much later on. But took her number, and she didn't expect me to call because people don't call and stuff. And then
Well, maybe your friend could have called, and then you could have just.
And she gave me that. But my buddy, he ended up talking to the other girl anyway.
Okay.
It was kind of, like I said, organic. It was nice organic. We stayed friends. He was at the wedding. And the wedding was in Israel.
So did you bring all your family there?
My family, my immediate family, folks, and I have cousins who live there. All showed up for the wedding. Sure, it was wild. I just made a wedding for my oldest daughter.
Wow.
So
really?
Just the difference, yeah.
Wow, you seem really young, dude.
I know. I told you I'm an old fart.
What are you talking? You mind disclosing that? How old are you?
48.
I would have never thought. Man. I thought you were in your 30s, to be honest. I thought you were in your
Because I'm so sexy.
I know if Gabe was listening to this, he'd be like, damn straight, Goldsmith. He'd say something like classic,
No, it's classic Gabe, bro. Gabe's my brother.
I would have him on for a podcast. He's a character. I haven't seen him in ages.
He'd be juggling and doing handstands. I don't know.
He's a character. So so you got into filmmaking. You met, first of all, great story on how you met your wife. I'm hoping.
Well, actually, it's sort of relevant to film as well, which is weird. Yeah. So, I mean, so I told you I was a good boy. So I listened to this guy who told me there's no industry in South Africa. I got into doing other things because I figured I'll never be a filmmaker, but I do want to have a wife and be responsible and blah blah blah. So I meet this girl and we hit it off, obviously, and we got married. Her uncle is actually a real film producer in Hollywood. I mean, there's a million producers out there, but he's done real work. He's even done films that have been nominated for, maybe even won some Oscars, I'm not sure. He did The Cooler with William H. Macy, and I think it was Buddy Baldwin, one of the Baldwins. He did another one called, with Nicolas Cage, The Bad Lieutenant was a remake.
I haven't seen a lot of Cage's movies. I've seen a decent amount, but.
Well, I mean, anyway, he's done a bunch of films, but I'm the good kid who's going and being a computer guy and, trying to start my family and whatever, and I was so brainwashed away from this passion that I had when I was a kid, and I never really developed or capitalized on this familiar relationship. I mean, a lot of stuff is achieved by knowing somebody in the industry, and maybe they give you especially when I was 20-something years old.
Sure.
As it happens, 10 years later, I'm studying in university to improve my marketability as an IT guy, and I took an elective in photography. We were living in London at the time. We bounced around, and I went and I did my first project for this photography, and I came home and like 12 hours. I worked solid 12 hours shooting stuff I got a permit to shoot in the subway, in the tube in London. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like I had worked 1 minute. And I thought, if I can make a living doing this, that's what I want to do. So I said to my wife, I thought she was going to divorce me. We had 3 kids at the time. I said to her, I want to do film. And she was like, all right, cool, we're young enough, go ahead, So I switched all my majors to film, and within a couple of years.
She didn't give you any issues.
No, she's
See,
awesome.
that's what I don't want to speak for you and what you felt, but your parents were cool with it. Your wife was cool with it. That's kind of like God's like, hello.
Do this already, mother effer. See, I don't know if you curse on your podcast. So.
Yeah, you don't want to, you don't have to.
When I went to film school, I learned to curse properly.
You went to curse.
Yeah, and then I had a master's in film now as well, and I was teaching in a couple of film schools here, and I'd walk into my first class, fresh out of high school kids, and the first day, the first class, the first 10 minutes, I dropped the F-bomb, and the kids are like...
They have I wonder what South African curses are.
Footsack. It's a South African curse. You wondered, so I gave
Yeah.
Footsack and your massa. No, I can't do these.
Okay, they'll do that.
They get really rough. I could do the Hebrew version, which you'll know what it is, because Amak.
Oh,
it's not Hebrew, it's Arabic.
Because
in Israel there's no curse words.
Yeah, but I'm saying you guys in South Africa say that?
No,
Yo
massa would be the same. I can't say it because it's so much.
Got it.
It's, I don't know, for some reason I can't. It's just so much dirtier sounding. At least not on the
doesn't really have curses. It's funny, so we have to take curses from other languages.
Right. It's amazing that it's kind of
pretty cool. Yeah. We don't really have that. We have derogatory words that we've created, but So
we want to bring light to the world. We don't want to.
It's funny because I used to have this, but when I was first doing the podcast, it was not controversial, but I had this back and forth feeling whether I should curse or not. Just my conclusion is, I don't give a shit because I have to be myself. So obviously when we say I have to be myself, I'm not going to let everybody know every single ounce of me. I mean, I'd like to have a little bit of tact and all that, but it's part of me. I curse in my everyday life. It helps explain things. It helps express things. Most people who are judging, well, no one's said anything to me, but if anyone's judging this kind of thing, they're cursing in their own lives and they're watching movies and listening to music that has it. So it's very simple. If you mind it, don't listen to it. If you don't mind it, great. Hope to have you. That's really. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying it in general.
No, like you said, it's expressive. It's such.
It helps me express.
Strong expression.
It wouldn't be natural otherwise. There's some words, there's some phrases or certain concepts that I need to throw a fuck in there to explain myself.
Once in a while.
We all do it. Yeah. Anyways, so then what kind of film have you gotten into? So now, because you were telling me that you got into. You were in the middle of saying your wife.
So she gave the okay. She gave the green light, so to speak. That's a big word in filmies.
Okay.
And so I started. I actually, like I said, changed all my classes to film, and because I had already started a family and I needed to make a living, and I was really passionate about getting it going. I was actually hitting the ground running. I mean, before I finished film school, I was already producing stuff.
Wow.
And it was mostly small stuff, music videos, just different corporate stuff for people. But my real passion is I want to do features.
Have you done a real estate video? Has anyone ever asked you that?
No. You always consider anything because, especially when there's lulls, COVID came along and impacted things a bit. And in fact, I haven't taught in college since COVID because I think the enrollment dipped a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I was really an adjunct, so I lost those jobs. So I considered it, but I haven't done real estate. You're in real estate, so...
I'm saying like real estate videography and stuff like that, because that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting if you're doing like those mansions in Manalapan,
So that's what I'm, eventually, when I do get into the luxury market, I do want to have very, very high quality videography and drone video. So it's not hard to find the right people, but figured out something.
Look, for me it's a possibility, but I'm not. I want to make feature films. I've got a couple of feature-length scripts that I have, and I did a bunch of music videos. I did some ads, some web ads. In some respects, people have heard of Dr. Miami. Do you know Dr. Miami at all? He's known at all. He's a plastic surgeon, celebrity plastic surgeon. So early on in my film career, let's call it, I met him and they actually, the doctor became famous. Well, he was already getting famous, but he became really famous after this. And the singer also managed to capitalize on it. But basically, I went to him to sell him a web ad about nose jobs. He wanted to do rhinoplasty. He wanted not a web ad, a TV ad. So we started talking about concepts and ideas, and then he wanted to see samples of my work, and a bunch of music videos that I had done involved this Jewish band. I don't know if you've heard of them, the Groggers.
I have heard of them.
Okay.
They do all the holiday songs.
No.
I've definitely heard of them.
You've heard of them, but they don't do holiday songs.
I think
they do they're a punk rock comedy religious Jewish band, but they kind of dissolved already at this point because they all moved all over the country and they never really made it as the Groggers. But I think that what we did as the Groggers helped to give them stepping stones. But basically, I mean, I had a life event that really impacted all of this, but this was one of the bigger things that happened just before this life event. I'll tell you about it in a second if you want. But basically, I went to sell him this ad and he said, "Hey, how about these guys? They're cool. I like the stuff they're making. They're funny. Would you ask them if they'll write a music video about nose jobs?" So I went to the guys and they said, "Okay, we'll do it, but there's some rules. We own the song and the doctor doesn't get to mess with any of the stuff that we put in there."
Okay.
So they wrote a song called Jucan Sam, the nose job love song.
That's controversial.
It's controversial right there. So this is funny because we live in Miami, and in Miami, what happens? People get shot at like Winn-Dixie or something, or there's a hurricane. Otherwise, there's no news.
Right.
It's pretty, not all that exciting.
Right.
So no one got shot. There were no hurricanes that week, and we put our music video up on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing, my kids are watching American Idol on TV, and they said, "Dad, your music video's on TV." And I'm like, "Am I being punked?" And I heard it, and it's coming up in the news: plastic surgeon in hot water over controversial music video. And this was this is the advert during American Idol for the news that's coming up.
What?
And Channel 10, I think it was on a few channels actually. Yeah. And they played, the news actually played basically my whole music video on the news. And
then it wasn't meant to give you exposure, it was meant to show what this doctor was doing.
So he was in hot water because what happened was like a string of events, like miraculous events. So the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, put out something, and it's really true. If I really think about it, and we're all Jewish, so the controversy of the big nose or whatever, we actually gave him a nose job. We thought that was going to be the controversy. The doctor gave him a nose job. It wasn't really, we never put it in the video, although I did shoot it. But he gave him a nose job. We thought that would be controversial, that the singer gets a nose job for the video. But it was actually the Jewish stereotype that kicked off all the controversy. So the ADL said it's like not proper use of the Jewish stereotype, and then of course the plastic surgeon, or the board of plastic surgeons, had to put the doctor under investigation. So it became an actual, just about newsworthy event, especially if there's no hurricanes coming. And so it blew up. I mean, they flew the singer over to California. There's a show called Doctors. It's kind of an Oprah spin-off, I think, where they interview people about medical stuff. So they had the singer go in there and they had the doctor. They interviewed him on, it was kind of like defending themselves against this, anti-Semitic thing that they did. And it wasn't anti-Semitic. It was like just tongue-in-cheek, you know.
But there's always such a fine line, though, you know what I mean? Because like some people who are saying that have a lot of hate behind it. Some people are totally joking. I said this, I spoke about this in another podcast. I think it's all about who the person is. So if they do the background check on the doctor and they see that he's never made any post about it or never been accused of it or he's just had a clean record and he seems like a well-to-do guy, it's most likely just a little joke, and we all need that. But if it's a guy who tweeted a bunch of nasty things and, he spit on his Jewish neighbor's car, or, stuff like that, then it's like, okay, this makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is he's a sweetheart, this guy. He continues to do controversial stuff, and I don't think I can say this stuff, some stuff I know about him. That's amazing. Like, he's super special. As a person, he's a charitable guy. He's a very good man, and he doesn't portray himself as the doctor I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that, well, not the funny thing, is that what I was going to say before is that a lot of the comments on the video, it actually started like a whole actual like anti-Semitic line of comments, and I never deleted them. I thought, let them keep their garbage, their disgusting nonsense up there, because you can delete anything off of your own posts. So I technically could have cleaned it up, and I never have. So if you check out UK and Sam, you can.
You'll see all these nasty comments.
You'll see all these nasty comments, and you could see that they're coming from like anti-Semitic places. It's funny.
It is what it is. It exposes that sometimes.
100%. So anyway, the life event, right? Yeah. So I was flying high. I mean, that was a good place to be, and things were happening. People were calling out of the blue about the next project and whatever. And in some ways, at the time, this was 2012-ish. I was certainly one of the more educated and one of the most accomplished religious Jewish filmmakers. So there was something there, like back in 2012. And then my daughter got sick. She got cancer. It was crazy. She went from a completely healthy, running around 6-year-old to, she had some back pain. We took her to the hospital and they didn't know what it was. They sent us back home with like Tylenol, and then like a week later she was back in hospital. They did an MRI. She went into the MRI walking. She came out and said, "Dad, I can't feel my legs." So the tumor had caused like a spinal cord injury. And so thank God she beat the cancer. She hammered it. She's an awesome young lady. She's now 14, but the spinal cord injury was a whole nother animal. We went crazy. We went and found therapies all over the country. We did tons and tons of research. We flew her to Baltimore, to Pennsylvania, to California for different things, and we basically, I basically stopped being a filmmaker for a while and became like a manager for my daughter's therapy. And thank God we did it, because at some point the doctors, when they don't see spontaneous recovery in the spinal cord injury area, it's like, stay in your wheelchair, I hope things are well, kind of thing. I mean, they're not that crass, but it almost feels like that. And then we just chased it, and we got her to the point where I got into running because of that, because I would start to push her in her wheelchair at these 5K so she could experience them. And then we got her to the point where she was actually able to walk using a walker and braces on her legs. And I would run the race, and then she would like finish the last 5 yards of the race walking, which is awesome. And you know, she's an awesome girl. COVID has messed things up a little bit as well because she hasn't been going to therapy. We're a little bit nervous about with a spinal cord injury if this upper respiratory issue is going to impact her or whatever. So we haven't really taken her out to do that kind of thing, but we will get back to it. Anyway, that life event impacted me. I stopped being a filmmaker for a while. I was actually doing my master's at UM at the time. I just started. It was the week that I'd started doing my master's in film. And so when I came out of there, I went straight to teaching, and I did more teaching, and I was teaching these young filmmakers all my tricks, and not really advancing. Now I'm back and doing it, and I've got so much stuff going on. It's like I've got a reality TV show that I'm wrapping up on the pilot for.
Is the reality TV show going to be on mainstream TV?
I don't know. I still have to sell it. This is it's hot off the press. I literally on Friday finished, I would say, what we call picture lock. So now it's ready to be color corrected and have the sound thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it myself because I can do all these things myself, but it's probably better if I get a person who does it full time to actually take a look at the color and the sound. And then it's a matter of shopping it to the TV bases. I wasn't commissioned to do it by any of the outlets, but I think there's a definite place for it, and it's really promising, the whole environment that exists in this show. A lot of reality TV shows are so fake. This is not fake. This is
some of them are. It really aggravates me on how scripted it's too obvious.
Yeah,
some of them are too obvious. No,
this is not. It made it harder to get that first show out and whatever. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that it can be enormous, and it can be international as well. Like we can make a season here in Florida, and then we could go up to New York, anywhere in the world. It's on Chabad Shluchim.
It's about, yeah. Okay.
It is following Shluchim. So Shluchim are emissaries of Chabad. They're everywhere in the world, in the craziest places, like Mumbai. Some have
I was
lost
talking
their
about
lives.
this with a friend on another episode. It's incredible what they do. Chabadniks are just next level, yeah.
I can't believe nobody's done a show about them, but here I am, and I've made my pilot. And
You went to other countries?
No, but there are there's potential to go there. I think you need to stick with your emissaries that you started with for a whole season. That's what I would say. Then people get to know them.
It's a very good idea.
Know their Chabad house.
Very good idea.
It's awesome. I don't know why no one ever did. I mean,
Well,
it's so colourful. It's like real. I mean,
that's what you got to find, man. You got to find the thing nobody's done. That's it.
okay.
awesome.
I just can't believe that nobody's done it yet. And so, God willing, it will be happening. And then I've got a whole bunch of other things happening and revisiting full feature length, what we call fictional narratives that are. I've got scripts for. I have to rewrite a couple of scripts, and I want to make them. I mean, those are hard because you've got to get money from it. I did make a documentary, also just before she got sick. This was after the Duke and Sam thing. Made a feature-length documentary, and I never sold it. I was just too busy with my daughter's stuff. I could probably re-edit that a little bit and sell it. It's an hour and a half thing on. A lot of my stuff has Jewish stuff involved.
Yeah, I can imagine. But what's the documentary on?
It's called Rejected. It's about a girl. Actually, some came out that were similar to it. It's about a girl who was in the Hasidic community and, had some life issues that pushed her out.
So similar to Unorthodox in a way.
Yeah, actually, funniest thing, I was so overwhelmed because I was doing this thing on myself, very low budget production, and I went out to one of these rallies in New York because that's where I was shooting it, and I interviewed the unorthodox girl, the girl who wrote the original book about unorthodox, and I had been rolling camera, but I was like doing everything, sound, rolling camera, interviewing, everything, and I was already rolling, and I hit the stop button by mistake.
Ooh.
I did the whole interview with her,
And it wasn't recorded.
and I wasn't recorded. And then I have like, so she's not in the film, obviously, but I have like her saying goodbye because I realized right at the end, oh shoot, I didn't record. You know, I was a younger filmmaker at the time. Now, you know, you get more into these things, and you have an experience like that, and you never start talking or anything until you see the red dot and the.
That's part of that's, by the way, a very, very important lesson to knowing yourself. So I know that I can sometimes be forgetful. We all are, but, you know, I have my own shtick. Like, I can be spacey at times. So I'm always, I kind of prepare myself ahead of time with certain things. I know in my brain, if I might forget this thing, let me set an alarm, or let me put it in my car beforehand, let me put it in my backpack right now, so this way there's no way I'll forget it. You know, just extra things. Let me, you know, with the camera also, it's happened once or twice. Didn't go a full episode, but yeah, it's such an important thing, by the way, for no matter what you're doing, no matter what industry or profession you're in, to make sure that you understand how you operate, and to take the proper precautions or necessary steps to make sure that you don't have those little slip-ups.
I mean, in film, it's actually called the cadence. Like when you're working in a crew, you teach this to film students. You say, you know, roll camera, or it depends on how you're doing, whatever, roll sound, roll camera, and the person who's doing it has to look and see that it's actually rolling, and then they'll say speed, and so he's getting feedback before he says roll camera, and then he says roll camera, and it's rolling or speed, and then the person goes in with the clapper and does the clapper. That's all.
See, I need to, so that's what it's called. It's called a clapper.
The
little thing that goes.
Yeah, it's called the clapper. Sticks. It's a slate.
I've always wanted to sit in those high wooden chairs, those like
the director's chairs. Yeah.
The director's chairs, and have that little. I always wanted that. That's something I definitely.
One of the film schools that I teach at has those as part of their furniture, so you could just go there and sit in the chair, and then you're done. Don't pay tuition.
That sounds fun. I also want to do voiceovers too.
Well, you could. You got a good.
So I love doing impersonations.
All right.
I can do a bunch. I can do it on the fly.
Yeah,
I do German, Arab, Israeli, French, Hispanic of some sort. I do my British. I don't know specific British, you know, dialects or whatever. So I'll just throw them out. I don't know if they're accurate or not. What else?
We could have a conversation. I mean, I used to do that as well, but I haven't done this for a very long time. And American is the hardest for me to do. So it's funny that you have the British. You know, I could do British much more easily, and of course the Scottish British.
Yeah, I can't get South African down.
No,
it's similar to British, but it's not. I can't get it.
Yeah, it's like squashed British.
I guess so. I guess so. That's a funny way to look at it.
Scottish is easy and fun. That's a fun one. They used to have an ad in South Africa, and so that's how I learned the Scottish accent.
You can do a Scottish accent.
Lunch break. I cannot worry about that now.
It's so good.
What now? You've ruined that friendship. That's actually a line from the stupid ad. It's like these two Scots are sitting there on a couch or chair or bench or whatever, and they're like the one's like, oh, look at the nuts and rice, and the guy's looking at his lunch bar, you know, and he's like, can I have a wee bite? And he says, what? No, you've ruined that friendship.
It's so good. And you look very Scottish.
Scottish, huh?
You can easily pass for a Scotsman. Nobody would be like, oh no, that guy's Jewish. No.
The next time I teach a class or something, I'll just go in with the Scottish accent.
Especially if you have like circular glasses, these like round glasses, and I don't know, you take your beard and like tie it into two separate things.
Right.
Wear anything green. I don't want to mix up Irish and Scottish now. They're both gonna be like, what do you mean? But like,
I don't think either of them own green. But yeah,
they don't own green. Red.
They both do green, but I'm saying neither of them own it.
Oh,
obviously the Irish have their green.
They both do their thing. Okay.
Yeah, I can do Irish as well. Irish is different. Can you do Irish?
Oh, I gotta.
It's Moyer and think of Braveheart. But you see, it can cross over.
How does it switch? I have a hard time doing. I know the difference between Scottish and Irish if I hear it, but I can't do the
So
impressions.
firstly, this is the disclaimer, I'm not an expert at all.
You're pretty good at it.
From our point of view, the Scottish is more guttural and more verbose, I guess. And then the Irish is kind of more laid back and a little bit, kind of almost more like South African compared to English. Like British English is like, I say, when I was in India, I noticed a tiger. I mean, that's Queen's English, right? I noticed a tiger, so I asked the porthole to fetch my revolver and I shot the tiger. It's one of those guys.
It's really good.
I told you I used to do this. See, you don't, it's like riding a bicycle, man. Right?
Well, I would say the accent was quite exquisite, my good sir. However, I could not find my spectacles no matter how long I looked. I looked far, I looked wide, I looked up, I looked down, I looked north and I looked south. But no matter where I looked, they were nowhere to be found.
You're making me think of somebody. Like I'm thinking of, I don't know, movies. I feel like I just watched a piece of a movie. Is that from a movie or is that?
No, I just made that up on the fly.
But who is the guy?
I was the one to do the coughing. They go, you know what I mean? Like they just.
So that's your English. That's your British. Or?
I have a few. I can do like more like.
Cockney?
It's so random. See, I don't know what that really is like. It's more. There's like kind of like the rugby or the soccer gang British like. Oh Nigel, what you go there? Like, hey, let's get over here and kick those guys' asses over there. Like I'm not so good at it.
I mean that's not bad. It's like sort of on the
like a 22-year-old like asshole who like goes with his boys and fights people at bars, but I like the old British the most, like the old, you know, the very eloquent 72-year-old British guy who still smokes his pipe in 2020. You know what I mean? Like just.
Yes, well, if that's what you'd like to do, son, well, who am I to stop you?
You know, like things like that.
That's pretty good.
But then yeah, German. I like German a lot. It's funny.
Oh, welcome to Volkswagen. We have cars and SUVs and trucks and all types of das Auto.
I'm like I have to work on it also, but I always do the und. I just overdo the und.
Und Hamburger und Frankfurter. You think these are American foods, but they are not. They are German, Deutschland foods.
You know, and they're just, yeah.
You should do voice. I mean, you should do voiceovers because you.
Yeah, and especially like child, like funny voice, like random voices, like an old lady, or like especially like an older Jewish woman.
Ah, Mr. Schwingelberg, what are you doing? The food's not ready before dinner.
You know, they're really.
Oh, what are you talking about?
You know. Yeah, like the French. I have a friend. You know him. Gabe was roommates with him. Frank.
Honestly, I know of him, but somehow lately I've been in the basement with Joe Biden. In a tunnel.
Yeah.
We made a tunnel from here to Joseph. Used to play cards, you know, with masks on from like 700 feet away.
Dude, that makes sense. I also do. Oh,
he's the president now. You can't talk about him like that anymore.
He's almost the president. Crazy stuff. So yeah, definitely can do some accents. Especially if I'm drunk or just very hyper, it just comes out more. I'll send it to you, or I'll try to put it in because my friend just did a recording of me last night doing a bunch of accents. So I'll send that over to you.
I was about to say that's what she said, but you know.
But I missed it.
No.
My friend sent it over to me doing a bunch of accents.
No, but I think before that, it just comes out. I don't know.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
It's so inappropriate. I'm like a religious Jewish guy with a beard.
Can we keep it?
I don't mind.
Yes.
No, the crossing the fingers thing, no, because it's not. We don't do that.
I understand that.
You know, there was one touch wood. You know, ever heard that one? This is also. I mean, you don't want
to touch wood. I don't know what it means, but it sounds like a
touch wood means touching the wood of like the cross, and people would say touch wood like meaning lahavdil, like meaning God willing.
Oh, okay. Because when I said touch, though you said touch wood, I was thinking wood as a penis.
No. It's a whole other thing. No, but I'm saying the things that I wouldn't allow in is that because that is something that I would never really say, or it might be nervousness, having this stuff on, but stuff like, rude jokes and stuff, I would probably, like you said, be yourself kind of thing. It's really not myself. It's just that ingrained in us, you hear people all around you all the time crossing their fingers, or touch wood, or those kind of things that are just colloquialisms. So much so that when I first heard the term, I once used, the term touch wood with somebody, I didn't know what it meant. No. See, now you're hooked on that.
Yeah.
But the person said to me, how can you say that? I was like, what's wrong with it? And they said, well, I mean, maybe this could keep I said, what's wrong with it? And they said, you don't know what it means? And I was like, no, I don't know. People just say that. And they said, no, it means like touching the cross. And obviously we're Jewish. No disrespect to anybody else, but we don't believe in Jesus. We don't. If we did, then we would not be Jewish.
Exactly.
It's just simple as that. It's like, with all respect to all the Christians who do believe it, and they should be entitled to believe whatever they want to believe. I don't believe that, and so I can't go and say things that make it look like I say stuff like that. I don't say Merry Christmas to anybody. I hope that everybody has a happy holiday. And unfortunately, historically, besides all the other connotations of a different religion, there's also the fact that Jews were killed as sport on Christmas for generations in different places around the world. So I'm very glad that it's changed, and God willing, it'll continue to be peaceful. And I think that the world and the communication and all this stuff that we have will get us there. That era of Mashiach, the reason that we don't follow Jesus is because we don't believe he's the Messiah.
Exactly.
For starters. But that era of Mashiach is possible now with the communication that we have. We see all the awesome peace stuff that's happening between, and even some of it's just token, but between the Arabs and the Jews. That's how it should be. These guys are our cousins, really, right? I mean, Abraham had a son Ishmael. He had a son Isaac. These are our cousins. So
we both lose our hair where we want to lose it, and we grow it where we don't want to grow it. That's how you know we're family.
Oh yeah.
An obnoxious amount of hair. Thankfully, I still have my hair. Hopefully, it'll last until as long as it does. But
I wear a cap. You see, it's cheaper than hair transplants.
But I don't know if I'll ever do the hair transplant thing. I think. Listen, I'm hoping I don't go bald for a long time, but if I do, I'll just rock a beard and I'll make sure I stay in shape. It's really what it is.
Right.
I think. As long as you're fit, as long as you're not like a big chunky guy, but as long as you're fit and you grow a nice full beard, and I think also if you have like more of an ovalish head, you can rock it. But so I'm not so concerned. If it happens, it happens.
Adam Sandler has good hair, right? My kids have good hair. I think
Adam Sandler has good hair. Now you have some Jews who have. I have non-Jewish blood. I have my father's not Jewish, so I might have taken some things from him.
But it's your mother's father where your hair stuff comes from. I think that genetically, that's actually what it is. If your mother's father was bald,
they say that. They say that, yeah. So, well, listen, I'm not even thinking about it. Whatever it is. So now with film now, what? I know you say you primarily do Jewish films, but what kind of films are you working on currently?
So all of my scripts right now have some level of Jewish element. It's just because it's what I understand. You don't want to go out there and start preach to people. People don't want to hear your preaching. You want to do that, become a rabbi, become a priest, whatever. I, however, relate to the world as a Jewish guy and from a Jewish perspective, and I believe that there's a lot that Judaism has to offer the world in a cultural way and others. And so I can honestly portray that element in the films. And actually it's part of why I got into it and with such passion, because I don't think that Jews are portrayed accurately at all almost across the board in any of these outlets. I mean, Seinfeld stuff and, Larry David, all that stuff is just, it's not, it has some aspect of cultural Judaism, but it doesn't have the real truth of it.
You know what it is? Most American films that do movies on Jewish people only cover Ashkenazi European Reform Judaism, meaning American Jews who are Jewish and have some Jewish tradition, but all it really is they have slightly Jewish-y accents, with the Jewish American accent, where the kind of like that whiny sound, where like the mother, David, come downstairs and get the gefilte fish. Like that, the one he's like, what do you want, Ma? Like just for like with the Big Bang Theory with what's his name? I only watched it a couple of times, but whoever is listening to this knows what I'm talking about. You never see the mother, but she's always yelling at her kid. Huh?
It's a stereotype, I'm saying.
Yeah, classics, but you don't show. American films don't portray Sephardic Jews, Middle Eastern Jews, how they live. Very rarely. There have been a couple of movies on these things, but very rarely. One thing that really gets me, whenever they show an Israeli film, they'll get an American guy to play an Israeli film. It's like, what are you doing? And then when they do have some sort of Israeli-ish, it's usually American actors, and half the time they only show European-looking Jewish people. It's like most Israelis are easily 50%, more so than not. Israelis are darker. So the world looks at anything they see, whether it's on the news or if it's a movie or a TV show, and they're used to seeing a white person that just happens to be Jewish. And there are very few differences, because most American Jews, they don't really do that, they don't practice that much. They go to public schools like everyone else, they eat food, any other food that anyone else eats, they listen to American music, they're just as American as anybody. So they just have these couple of little things they do that separate, that make them a slightly different. So when that's what we understand as Jewish people, then in reality, we don't really know what's going on. We don't really know much. But when you grew up, did you grow up religious or no?
For the most part, my parents got into it more when I was like 6 years old. So, we had like a cool secular, real youth, I guess, whatever, from 1 to 6, where my parents would go to the Jewish Guild in South Africa on a Saturday, and we'd go to the pool and hang out. That was my Shabbos, my Shabbat. And then they started getting into authentic Judaism and really found their way back. And so since then, since about second grade or something along those lines, I've been more and more religious throughout my life. And then, when I was a teenager, I went and sowed my wild oats kind of thing. I went and, checked out the world, just because I was so free when I was younger, when we would do the Jewish Guild thing, and then, not Jewish Guilt. The Jewish Guild was the name of
you might have gotten a few people there. I have a funny feeling some people heard guilt also.
Right, so just not guilt. And I wanted to explore just life, freedom, that kind of thing. So I did that for a bit, and then I got back into it, and then I met my wife in Jerusalem when I was in Yeshiva in Israel, where I put myself for a while. And, since then I've been religious, I mean, this is talking 20-something years since we married.
Wow. I really didn't think you were in your 40s. It's fine.
That's all right. That's good. Yeah. I do push-ups occasionally. Actually, I shot a thing. It was for the University of Miami. It was called Rock Bottom.
Okay.
I wasn't the director of this one. I was just helping out a friend. I was director of photography, and she wrote a story for University of Miami where they started to, they wanted to teach the doctors like ethics. So they used to be dry videos. Do say this to a patient, don't say that to a patient, if they would even give them a video. And they had this idea to do actual like dramas where they could put the story out with like real actors and everything like that, and try to make a real scenario and teach them ethics. That way they could have a discussion. It would just be more interesting for class. So it was really a cool project to be involved in. And they gave us, this is when I was doing my master's at University of Miami, and they gave us this story to do. It was called Rock Bottom, and it was a male stripper. So, so I know what it's like to get rained on. So I was, one of the shots, I was involved in creating the shots, because as the director of Toby, you work with the director to figure out, how you want things to look and stuff.
Yeah.
So one of the things was it would be really cool if you saw in slow motion, it's like money floating down and the girls like jumping around in the background. So we had real strippers, obviously, doing the actual show, and then I was lying up there and the girls were like throwing money at me, and it was kind of funny with the camera. It was really interesting. But anyway, so I don't even know why I brought this up, but
It's hilarious.
I don't remember what we were saying before, but for some reason it reminded me of that project. And the story was really this guy he was an older stripper, maybe because you said I'm older. And he was trying to enhance himself in his butt, rock bottom, and he meets this plastic surgeon. It's something in me and plastic surgeons, right? And he meets this plastic surgeon, this woman who's being brought to this ladies' club by her friend, the nurse. And so he shows up at her office to get the surgery done, and she says, sorry, I can't do the surgery. See the ethical part or whatever. You don't need it, there's no fat in your body, it's not going to work, blah, blah, blah. So he goes to some back, street place in Miami, and they inject some stuff into his butt. And then he goes septic and he dies. I mean, that was a story. Lovely, beautiful story. But that was, I figured, I told you there was a film, I had to give you all the meat and potatoes. And then obviously, the university, it's out there. You can actually Google rock bottom deliberations, I think. And you'll
I'll check it out for sure.
You'll find the stripper film.
I'm going to look it up.
How
For sure.
funny.
If I find it,
It was not working out, I just remembered. So when I'm doing this, I was a little pudgy. And I thought, damn, I'm around these hot guys, it's not fair, I'm going to go learn how to do a push-up again. So I did, and now I'm pretty fit.
Good. I see, yeah, dude, you definitely,
Thank God.
Definitely fit.
For an old fart.
yes,
Thanks.
yes, a very old fart you are. But no, but you're, yeah, dude, it's definitely not common, man. People in their mid-40s are usually like,
God.
quite pudgy, I'd say. So yeah, good for you, man. I'm definitely going to check out more of your content.
Sure.
Based on what you're telling me, it sounds very interesting.
A lot of it's going to be old, though. I have to warn you, a lot of it is pre-2012 just because, for two reasons. One is because of the incident with my daughter that I mentioned. The other reason is because I really started to think that, I'm doing a bunch of music videos and stuff, and they're cool to do and whatever, but I really need to move on to the next level. And so a lot of the projects I'm doing had a lot more scope and just, they're not stuff that you just put out on the web. Or at least back then they weren't. The world changed a lot while my daughter was going through what she went through, but now with the experience and that I've got, I'm really, like I said, working on a whole lot of things. And I have stuff that I could also send you. Maybe I'll send you this pilot that I mentioned. I'll send you just the rough cut. It's a rough cut.
That'd be awesome. I would love to see it, yeah. I'll be honest with you, I've always wanted to do acting. Like, I wouldn't do just any form. I wouldn't, it's this kind of thing where I still have like my boundaries, only certain things I would do. But I feel like I'm such an animated person. And I love doing these different impersonations. I like to be able to personify a character or idea that I feel hasn't been done properly. Because there really are some films that they really don't do a good job with certain certain roles.
Right, even with good actors. So
yeah, yes, it's not even the actor's fault. The actor's just not the right person for that.
Right. So casting.
I'm trying to think of examples because there's plenty of them. But like for instance, the Zohan, right? Adam Sandler. I think that was just a parody. It was funny. So he did great in the movie. It was hilarious. But he's not. Meaning, because it's a comedy, it worked. But if he was trying to actually portray an Israeli, I don't know how well he would do because the accent's not really on point.
Oh, well, it's not just the accent.
I think it's meant to be that way on purpose, maybe. But
yeah, that could be with it. With the Zohan, probably. But I get it. There is an authenticity. I want to bring the authenticity to the Jewish element because it's just not there. Even in the most authentic stuff, like Shtisel. Have you heard of Shtisel?
Sure,
It comes from Israel originally.
Yeah.
Actually, I think they just started one series maybe in Brooklyn. There's such a mega authenticity. The guys who are playing the roles are getting the mannerisms, a lot of the stuff they're getting down, and they really look like Orthodox Jews, and they're not for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And
Unorthodox was fantastic with the acting.
but it still lacks, even when they get it down to that level of fine and looks real, in a way it's worse because there's still not the authenticity. They don't get the essence of what's driving these
You know what
guys.
it is though? I think to a large degree it's because they're not that. Meaning, it's very hard to personify a Hasidic Jew because they're such different people. They're so unique. There's so few of them in the world. So the only people who can really act them out, because they're so on the fringe of society, they're just this insular community, no one really knows about them. So to have even Jews, even me, I honestly think I would do a pretty damn good job because I grew up around them. I know a lot of them. I worked with them as a waiter for years. Like I feel like I can do the mannerisms, the whole thing. I'll be
Okay,
honest.
so I'll finish that for you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It takes, let's say you have somebody who's not the actual Hasidic Jew, and you're casting somebody who's a secular or even a somewhat religious Jew, but just not the Hasidic, so he doesn't have the actual essence of where the guy's coming from or girl. If you have the right director, the director takes you there. That's what I do. I could take one of those folks and help them to portray what the authentic character is in that situation. And I mean, a director has to do something. They're not there just to say action, cut. You know, they're there to help the actors get to where they can be. I mean, there is a role that the director plays, and it's subtle. It's lost on most people. They don't realize. You know, you see all the pictures of directors. You know, they're pointing, they're doing something, and they do. I mean, they have to know the lighting, the camera, and what the lenses are. They have to understand the language of what they're working with. Right. But then there's working with the actors, which is a very important part, and then just understanding how to get them to that point. Now, I'm not saying the directors are bad. The directors of Stress and all that are really pretty good, but I feel like they can't be. I mean, I'm a Hasidic Jew, and I really understand that essence of how to get there. I mean, and I have to apologize for any cursing as a Hasidic Jew, but I nevertheless do understand that how that works, and I want to put that out there. And it's not just the Hasidic Jew; it's just the importance of understanding some Goyim, some non-Jewish. Goyim, by the way, is not a derogatory word. A lot of people think Goy is a derogatory word.
Because it's sometimes said in a derogatory way. That's the truth.
Right, but actually Goy is, Israel is called a Goy Gadol. A Goy...
a great nation.
Is a Goy Gadol, I guess, a great nation.
It just means nation. It means
nation.
Goyim just means nations. Or
exactly, but I mean, since I'm talking about it, I want to...
Yeah, no.
Some of the best actors as Jews were non-Jews. Brandon Fraser did a really good Jew in School Ties. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I didn't see it.
And that. The funny thing is, he was, maybe blindly, but he was authentic. He was a proud, amazing Jew. Kind of, the character in a way was similar to, I'm going to suffer about the name of the film. It was one of those Nazi ones
That's the Daniel Craig.
With the Daniel Craig, yeah.
That is so funny that you and I were thinking the same thing. It was with the Belsky Brothers. Yes. Belsky Brothers, what was the movie called? The movie was called Defiance.
Defiance.
Phenomenal movie. One of my favorite
movies. So you enjoy School Ties as well.
Daniel Craig killed it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the other guy, I know
Schreiber, wasn't it?
So Daniel Schreiber's Jewish, and he played, what's his name? He played, the Belsky Brothers, their names were, his name was, Tovia was Daniel Craig. Who was the other guy? I don't know. There were three
But
brothers.
is Daniel Craig Jewish? I actually don't
No.
know.
Pretty sure he isn't. Schreiber is, and then the other guy, the other blonde guy, I don't think is either. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but they all did a phenomenal job.
And I get
Phenomenal
mad.
job.
My kids were telling me the other day about these people who commenting on Reddit and all these places that Jewish people are not attractive and blah blah. Do they know that Scarlett Johansson is Jewish? Gal Gadot, just by the way, Wonder Woman. So they did something with her face and they put it into a mold of something perfect that they pre-constructed, and she turned out to literally fit in the mold. Gal Gadot happens to be Jewish.
Correct.
I mean,
There's a lot of, you know what it is, man? There are numerous attractive Jews, but the reality also,
Kirk Douglas.
I'm going to say something
I love
very
Kirk.
controversial.
Yes.
I think that there's also Jews that have married into their families a lot, and then you start to develop certain features that aren't as attractive. And attraction
Kirk Douglas,
is
I just say Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas has a look. Michael Douglas looks a lot like Kirk Douglas looked, and Michael Douglas' mother's not Jewish. So what you said has a thing, but Michael looks like Kirk, so I don't know. Kirk Douglas was Jewish as Jewish can be, and many others. Okay, Adam Sandler's got the egghead. I mean, he even jokes about it, right? Sorry, I interrupted you, dude.
Yeah, like there are people who say I look Jewish. There are people who say I don't. You know, I'm half Italian, half Jewish. A lot of us look similar, so I don't know if I look more Jewish or more Italian. I'm sure there are people who watch this like, oh, you look Jewish as hell. Some people are like, I don't know what you really Jewish really looks like. Or other people are like, you look Italian. I get it all. I don't usually get people thinking like I'm Jewish right off the bat, but like I feel like people who are also Jewish that know me might be like, yeah, you know, whatever. A lot of it depends on also how you come off. Like, because I grew up in Brooklyn, if I see a person wearing a baseball cap and they have a certain looking face, you can kind of just tell. There are definitely some people that have what you call a Jewish look for sure. And they're not necessarily Jewish, but I actually find it more so in women. It's funny. I love this conversation.
I'm not supposed to look at women anymore because I'm married.
But like, I could sometimes see a girl like in a random public place, like in a supermarket, and I just look at her and I'm like, she's probably Jewish. And she's not wearing anything that particularly Jewish, but just has a certain face. And it's the kind of thing that you either know or you don't. But it's not always, it's more often than not the case, because we've lived all over the world, we've traveled all over the world, we speak all these different languages, you have Jews from all walks of life, so it's not really as true of a thing as maybe it once was. Maybe when we were all concentrated in Europe, then, you know,
but we weren't. I mean, we never really were. There's Ethiopian Jews who are 100% Jewish.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of black Jews who converted, but Ethiopian Jews are completely black. There's all the Sephardic Jews, as you mentioned before,
Sure.
really dark skin, you know, Sephardic. The Yemenites are very dark skinned, but still, you know, I don't know if they, could you call them Caucasian? I don't know.
Yeah, the Yemenites?
Yemenites.
Yemenites are definitely, Yemenites are what you call Mizrahi, so they're kind of African also in their own right.
But they're not black. Arabs. I mean, they're not black in
right.
terms
Yemen, listen, at the end of the day, Yemenite Jews are Jewish people by blood, but you can argue that they're Arab Jews. You can argue that. Yes. I don't know, it sounds kind of like an oxymoron when you...
So, I mean, I'm so against, like, the separating between, yeah, fine, you grew up, your mother looked like that, your father, who gives a crap?
I completely agree
honestly,
with you.
A human being is we all essentially brothers, sons, sisters, we all essentially are sisters and brothers, and we come from Adam and Eve. That's it, you know, I mean, and even if you don't believe in Adam and Eve, you know, we're still, the human race is all originally from the same DNA. We share, the DNA is exactly the same. You can't tell skin color from DNA. I saw that recently, actually, on a science something. I read it.
Well, you can't tell skin color, but you can tell which countries they're from, and based on those countries, you can kind of make those assumptions.
Okay, but I might come up as, I've never done my DNA thing, but I might come up as African.
100%. I get what you're saying. Makes sense. With that being said, kind sir, thank you very much for coming on to the episode.
Thank you for having me.
You're very pleasant to speak with. You just, it's a lot of it's the accent, by the way. But
Plus, I'm drunk. My son had his bar mitzvah today. We didn't have
I'm not even gonna
so
deny
I
it.
just drank the, no, actually.
Another thing, I'm partially believing that you're drunk now. Lubavitch Jews, or what you call Chabad Jews, I've spoken this on other episodes. One of the stereotypes of Chabad Jews, aside from all the wonderful stereotypes about them, is that they like to drink a lot, due to the fact that Lubavitch, the sect, started in Russia, if I'm not mistaken, and we know how Russians are. So ultimately, that's how it is. So you're welcome. I suggest you drink some water before you drive back. And Farrell, thank you
I'm
so
not
much.
drunk.
Yeah, okay, I believe you. Farrell, thank you so much for coming, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And you taught me. This is the first time I've really done. I did one with my friend Ezra where we talked about film. He's a lot newer in the business. He seems to be very busy now, and he's extremely passionate about it. So we had on episode 8. If you ever have a moment to check it out,
Cool.
definitely check it out. And if there's any time you want to collaborate with someone in Israel, I'm sure maybe you know some Israeli filmmakers, but he's up and coming. I think he's going to be doing phenomenal things in the next couple of years. Shout out to you, Ez.
He's in Israel?
Ezra Weiser. He was a friend of mine in the army. Sweetheart.
I
Absolutely.
work with some
Awesome guy.
Americans who live in Israel right now. Well, they're Israeli now, by Aliyah.
Right. So he made Aliyah, yeah. So yeah, without further ado, I always say without further ado at the end of my episode. Thank you so much for coming. Stay tuned for another episode of Soothing Semantics. Merci beaucoup. Until next time, how do you say it? Madame and Mademoiselle. No, Mademoiselle, Madame is the same. They're both women. How do you say?
Monsieur.
Oh yeah, Monsieur. Monsieur. All right, guys.